the Minister has arrived, so I'd love to invite Steve Norris back, who I'm sure will be quite the right person to introduce our Minister for this morning, the Right Honourable Jessie Norman MP, Minister for Transport, Decarbonisation and Technology. Steve.
Thank you, Nicola. That's it. He's Jessie Norman and he's the Minister of State for Transport. More to the point, Jessie, as some of you may know, is actually in his second period of office in the Department of Transport. We last heard him at Transport at the Highways UK event a few years ago when he made a brilliant speech at that stage about our transport policy, and it really did, I think, set the room alight. His current responsibilities are perhaps what's most important. He's responsible for transport decarbonisation, air quality, technology, for example, autonomous vehicle technology, drones, e-scooters, all of these sort of very, very easy problems, aren't they? Secondary legislation, active travel, space, skills, science and research, corporate and public appointments, and accessibility. Well, fortunately, you're talking with, or you will hear from, one of the brightest minds in the current government, or indeed in my experience in any government. Jessie's not only been in the Department of Transport, he was briefly in the Foreign Office. Before that, he was Financial Secretary to the Treasury. He's one of the brightest minds in this country, and it's an absolute privilege to have him come here to speak to us today. Can I introduce Jessie Norman? Jessie.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Steve, for that, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming along today. I mean, no one can survive an introduction as kind as that, and I'm not going to try. But I do think, whenever I come to a Steve Norris event, that it's rather like we have an event in Herefordshire, where I'm from, which is a kind of 4 or 5 day rock festival, named after a character called Peter Nosworthy. It's known as Nostock. It wasn't that funny. I always think of Steve's events as a kind of Nostock in their own right, a kind of continuous celebration of all things Norris across a variety of different modes and infrastructure methods. It's a delight to be able to speak to you today at this inaugural Interchange conference. What a fantastic gathering and what a great ambition. And how nice to be surrounded by representatives of so many different areas of our transport, kind of wider ecosystem. As I look down the list, it's a kind of galaxy of talent. I think of myself as the kind of throat clearing before the massive smorgasbord of joy you're going to have later on, culminating with Rory, the legendary Rory Sutherland. So I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And I'm delighted to be in the hands of not just Steve, but Patrick McLaughlin. I don't know if Patrick's here. I always think of Steve and Patrick as the Blues Brothers of transport, the Jake and Elwood. They're getting the band back together. We're on a mission from God. That's the nature of the energy that they give to this kind of engagement, and how fantastic it is. And of course, as Steve has said, I do skills, and therefore I work closely with the fantastic Rachel Skinner. I'm delighted to see her there as well in the front row, because skills are absolutely, I mean, you would know this. I mean, I'm a mad fetishist for skills. I'm trying to build a university in Hereford, a STEM university all about skills. So believe me, skills are very close to my heart, and they're also incredibly close to the kinds of transitions that we need to make in all aspects of our innovation and infrastructure. So what a fantastic thing, and what fantastic work she does chairing our Transport, Employment and Skills Task Force. Now, you know, as I know, that Interchange's vision is to have a net zero, fully integrated transport system. And I mean, I don't think we've really begun to understand in its full complexity what an extraordinary thing that is. But we are making, in many ways, you are making, in many ways, remarkable progress. And I must say, I don't think of it, I mean, you can theorize it. I've had a time myself as an academic. I don't think of it as an academic matter. I think of this as intensely practical, bringing theory and practice together to produce solutions that actually solve people's problems in a way that delivers for them right now, or if not now, then on an ascertainable path, which gives us all an ability to plan and to work together. And of course, rising to that great opportunity, arguably the biggest opportunity we face, which is to challenge and meet the threat of climate change. So sustainability, technology come together innovation transportation. I'm going to talk a bit today about net zero. I'm going to talk about air quality, which I take as being the kind of what of the system, but I'm also going to talk about the how, technology and choices, because that's obviously the means to get to the goal that we all seek. So let's start with the world's most ambitious strategy for decarbonizing transport. I refer, of course, to our very own Transport Decarbonization Plan of 2021, the umbrella under which so much of the work that we do in government and actually the way in which we influence and work with our stakeholders sits. Now, we know that it's incumbent on us, and Steve and John have already talked about this, about the importance of attacking the largest source of our remaining carbon emissions in the UK for CO2, and that is transport. And those commitments in there, and that umbrella that we've set out, are pushing us, are what inspire us to commit the UK to a net zero rail network by 2050, kickstart the commercialization of sustainable aviation fuels. We may have seen we just announced a consultation on the SAF mandate, and of course, above all, to end the sale of all new polluting road vehicles in the next 2 decades, up to and including the heaviest trucks. And you will have seen in that area, of course, the zero-emission vehicle mandate consultation we've put out there, very widely awaited. I think a pioneering piece of work in its own right, if I may say so, and a device which is designed to give precisely the kind of positive steers that will even get John Armitt buying an electric car and using it, in the full knowledge that he'll be able to do so with a proper charge for the indefinite future. So how fantastic is that? I do think, though, that underneath that umbrella, we've got to think not just about what those goals are, but about innovation as well. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the film Spectre, James Bond film. Raise your hand if you've seen the film Spectre. Excellent, very good. You may recall that there is an aeroplane in Spectre that finds itself losing its wings and going skiing. Does that strike a note? Now, raise your hands if you've seen the aeroplane going skiing in Spectre, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, good. That aeroplane was designed by my uncle, Desmond Norman. Britain-Norman Islander, this is the best short takeoff and landing aircraft ever produced. And by the way, also in itself, a potential pioneer in the area we're talking about, because it is so good as a short takeoff and landing aircraft. It carries so much weight. It can carry all the batteries needed to power fuel cells in place of its Lycoming engines, and therefore it's already a test vehicle for sustainable aviation. And what a fantastic thing is that. So when I see the kind of innovation that you're discussing today, it thrills my heart with joy, because it suggests to me that we are going to be making rapid progress towards the discharge of that zero-emission vehicle mandate. And of course, that is a crucial goal that we have set out over the last few weeks. Now, we don't want to do that by itself. We recognize that vehicles and infrastructure go together. It's a symbiotic relationship. You don't buy a vehicle if you don't know you can have the infrastructure, as John's reminded us. And that's why we've invested hundreds and pledged hundreds of millions of pounds through the Levi scheme, through AUKS, through rapid charging, into building that energy and charging infrastructure. And I take a very close interest in this. I'm working with all elements of that infrastructure. Many of you may have had the hot breath of ministerial interest on the back of your neck in this area if you're interested in charging, because it's something that I personally take extremely seriously for all the reasons you understand and that the rest of the world knows from its own engagement with electric vehicles. Now, that is a crucial thing, but of course it's also crucial to think about leadership. And I do spend a lot of time concerning myself with how we're going to move forward, how we're going to internationalize that drive and that focus. And of course, that came most recently for us with the Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, COP26, and the over 120 signatures that we secured from city authorities across the globe to the Zero Emission Vehicle Declaration. We can't just think of this in terms of a bordered world. Environmental change, climate change doesn't stop at the border, and nor should we. So we need that kind of commitment to 100% new zero-emission car and van sales by 2040 by all of those signatory cities if we're going to get the actions that we need to protect the planet up, running, and across the line. And again, integration and internationalization going together. So that's net zero. And I mean, I could talk a little bit about a whole bunch of other technologies, but let's focus just on the ones that are directly delivering that. On air quality, of course, what could be a more essential issue for us than improving the quality of the air we breathe? What could be more important than to leveling up communities, to equity, to feeling an inclusive sense of society moving forward together, that everyone in an area as common as the air we breathe should be able to breathe the same quality air and the highest quality air we can. It gives better economic outcomes, it gives better livelihoods, it makes our streets cleaner, but above all, it improves human health and human well-being. And that is something, not least in a post-pandemic era, that we are extraordinarily and rightly sensitive to. Now, you will know since 2010, fine particulate matter emissions have fallen by 10%, nitrogen oxides by 45%. So we are making progress in this area, but of course, we only make progress because of collective action, and therefore, inevitably, government has a role, and we must turn up that dial. We need to go that extra notch, that extra degree further, and use the collaboration, use the energy, use the integration, the innovation that you are promising and you are undertaking yourselves in your own lives in order to try to continue to make progress. I think of the work we're doing with local authorities. You may know that we've supported them with over £880 million of cash to ensure that local clean air plans are implemented in a way that works for local people. And of course, we've also set out long-term legally binding targets to reduce emissions of fine particulate matter following 3 years of rigorous consideration of the scientific and economic evidence. So that is my other what. My first was net zero, my second is air quality. Both of those absolutely essential. How are we going to achieve them? Technology, of course, will be crucial in that area. Now, take mobility as a service, something I think many of you will know about and be involved in, a crucial example of the benefits of integration. That exists not just on the basis of skills and technologies we already have, integrating modes, information, payment functions into a single mobility service, but it also, of course, requires cooperation, active engagement between government and local authorities working together. And you will have seen we've invested in future transport zones, almost £100 million to support mobility as a service models. But we're also thinking hard about e-scooters. Steve mentioned that's an area of my great interest. And indeed, that whole question of light electric vehicles. And there we will be bringing forward, as soon as legislative time permits, legislation that allows us to embed and assist and enforce against those new vehicles in ways that promote the kinds of outcomes and the beneficial change that we want to see. And that will establish that category of low emission, zero emission, low speed vehicle category as distinct from cycle and motor vehicles in a way that I think will again enable and encourage change. As soon as we know what the guidelines are, as you know, you've got something against which to innovate. And that, in turn, will create additional markets for British designers and innovators in which to do their work. So I'm very excited about that, and I think that will be a crucial aspect of enabling it. There's lots of evidence that e-scooters tend to be used by people on lower incomes, slightly more marginalized. There's an issue of social equity there as well, which is really important. And then, of course, that in turn diverts our attention to questions of places where e-scooters aren't necessarily going to be the right solution or part of a solution. And in rural areas, I come from Herefordshire, there are lots of parts of Herefordshire, you're not going to be using an e-scooter anytime soon, but you are going to be using different forms of community transport. You're going to be using minibuses, and of course, we've got a rural mobility fund to support demand-led minibus trials in rural areas. So we think a lot about all of these elements. Why? To create a single integrated ecosystem in which those crucial themes of technology, integration, innovation that you've pioneered can do their work. So choice and opportunity at last, as enabled by technology. We need to go with the grain of human beings if we're going to get the maximum fast, rapid and effective change. That doesn't mean in absolutely every aspect of people's lives. It means pricing things in a way that makes market work and makes innovations really tell and make a difference. And of course, transport has always been like this. Ships, trains, bikes, cars, planes. There has been a pattern over centuries of continuous evolution punctured by discontinuities and radical innovations. And That's a pattern I think we can expect to see, of course, speeded up as fashion and a communal mindset and collective information flows start to change people's behavior even more rapidly than it has in the past. Now, people talk a lot about AI these days. It would be wrong not to mention it. I wouldn't get too obsessive about ChatGPT, and I mean, it's fascinating to see what's being done with large language models. It is undoubtedly a benchmark. There are so many different ways in which we can think of AI in transport, indeed already thinking about AI in transport. And that does include large language models, but it also includes many other areas. I think of autonomy, I think of optimization, I think of fraud detection and prevention, prediction, expert prediction. There are so many different areas in which we can and will be continuing to use AI. It's a big challenge for us as a department. We need to make sure that our people are as skilled and as expert in thinking about regulation, thinking about industry structure and engagement with our own partners as they possibly can be. You'll know we've just published the Transport Data Strategy, absolutely vital document for all of the nuts and bolts, the crucial ones and series that are going to go into the way we think about technology, the way you think about technology. That's a really important thing. And we're also thinking about how already we update that, how we integrate it into artificial intelligence. So technology remains absolutely foundational to the work that we do. It's one of the things that makes DFT so exciting as a department. It's one of the reasons I was so excited to get back there and wave aside the bunting, push aside the red carpets, proffered generously by my civil servants. No, that was a jeu d'esprit, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say this, finally. If you haven't seen it, we're doing incredibly interesting work with the Turing Institute using AI to predict active travel infrastructure needs. So that's another current example of how we're using that technology in an existing context. I've talked about innovation, I've talked about integration, I've talked about technology, choice, the what, and the how. It's been an absolutely fascinating opportunity to think hard about these topics with you and for you. I congratulate you on this amazing conference that you've pulled together. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone who's made it possible. Have a fabulous couple of days, and best of luck in your future work. Thank you so much.
Would you like to take a seat? Thank you for that. Thank you very much. Fascinating, and it's great to have you here as well. I'm sure that we'll have lots of questions, so we've already got them here already, so you can see what's been coming in. Should we start with questions? Let's get straight in it with which one? Let's go from the top here. So,
the easy ones.
Question for Minister. No, let's find the hard ones. Right, okay. So what's happening with the future of the Transport Bill, which was seen as key for connected, automated vehicles and micro-mobility, including e-scooters?
Well, thank you very much, Nicola. Many years ago, I was an academic, and someone would occasionally ask me a question, which was just extremely testing for different reasons, and I'd say invariably, thank you so much for your contribution. I greatly appreciate it. And move very swiftly on to the next question. I'd love to be able to do that. Now, I think the fact of the matter is that the Future Transport Bill, a topic very close to my heart, is absolutely something the government is closely cogitating. We're getting to the end of a parliamentary term. We've got a very short fourth session. There's a whole bunch of different priorities, and we're having to fight our corner, but believe me, we're doing it with great energy and diligence, and I'm hopeful of a favourable result, but we've been here before and we can't always guarantee it, and that's the nature of democracy. I mean, John talked about politics earlier. I don't think of it as politics, I think of it as consent. I think of it as trying to meet people's needs where you can't always trade them off. There isn't one scale. It may be a Home Office thing, it may be a DEFRA thing, it may be Cabinet Office, it could be technology, it could be whatever, but we will do whatever we can to get this bill in post, in place, and highly effectively discharged.
Okay, all right. Another question here.
Anonymous has got a lot of questions.
Anonymous has got an awful lot of questions.
He or she is doing a lot of good work.
All right, let's have a look. So, we've done that. With the cost of living crisis, what more can the government do to make EVs accessible financially for the masses in order to shift the needle on take-up? That's a good question.
Well, the first thing to say on take-up is it's already, as you know, going very fast. I wouldn't get too distracted about, occasional media stories of the kind that, we see from time to time. The needle is very firmly on, at the top of the speed limit, and we're accelerating. And I think that the money that's just been announced in terms of Levi and the future work we're doing on Rapid and AUX will only turbocharge that further. And of course, the ZEV vehicle mandate creates an additional incentive and a planning platform. So I think that all that is very, very good. In case of making EVs accessible, well, we have done that historically through grants, and there are still grants in place for different parts of the sector. But of course, ultimately, the key point is let markets take over. Let firms compete with each other and let the force of competition and innovation drive prices down. And of course, when they do so, they don't just do that in the primary market, but they also create a bigger, deeper, and more accessible secondary market. We have many leasing companies, lots of financial organizations in this country that allow people to buy things on schemes, either through fleets or directly. And so I don't actually think that accessibility in that sense is going to be too much of a problem over time.
Good. Now, Jesse, I'd love to ask you the last question there, but it's being hidden by the edge of the stage. So.
Well, I can't really read it from here.
Oh, so. There we are. No, it's no longer hidden because they've very kindly moved it up.
It says every journey starts on foot from the front door. How can we ensure that any future transport strategy includes serious active travel options and is funded? Well, my transport journey today, a splendidly integrated exercise involving my bicycle and then Avanti trains and then a walk in. And so I am a massive proponent of active travel. I think I can't imagine a cheaper, simpler, more environmentally friendly, more healthy alternative. Look at any person you know over the age of 70, and if they look fit to you, the chances are they're riding a bicycle. So I would strongly, I'm a kind of mad avatar for and proponent of active travel. The truth of the matter is we invest an enormous amount of active travel in different ways, and we will continue to do so. And that, of course, you've got the city schemes, you've got direct money that goes into ATE, which are doing phenomenal work, as you may see, and by the way, saving a lot of local authorities money by helping them to design better quality schemes, build local capability. We invest in local capabilities itself within authorities in order to lower their costs. And we, of course, also have Levelling Up Fund money, Stronger Towns Fund money, much of which bears on active travel. So it's a very fast, accelerating, exciting area. And I think we can, notwithstanding some of the current budgetary pressures, I'm sure we can continue to make it so in the near future.
Okay, I think we have time for some more. Last one.
I love that.
Last one.
Questions. We've got a human being who actually asked a question.
Okay, so we have for all the right praise for the ZEV mandate. How would the minister respond to criticism that it comes way too late for car makers to adapt or prepare in good time?
Well, it has been later than we would have liked, and that's often inevitable when you're getting a big measure through government. But actually, here in government, it hasn't really. An awful lot of it has been to make sure that the scheme is well enough and the proposals are well enough designed to be able to work very closely with an extremely diverse sector. The automotive sector in this country is, wildly. You've got very high-end, small-run manufacturers. You've got volume manufacturers. You've got EV heavy players. You've got players who are heavy in FEVs. It's a big, big, interesting market, and we want to be sure that this works for everyone. And that's why we've put it out for consultation. People have known in outline what's coming for a long time, but they've needed to see the hard detail that's out there, and I think they will respond to it. We've got 9 months until the beginning of the new year, and let's see what the results of the consultation are. I'm certainly not going to get too worked up until we've seen how that works. I mean, so far, I have to say the reaction's been remarkably positive. And when you consider what's happening in countries not so far removed from this one, I think, I feel quite good about it, actually.
Okay. And you know how I said that was the last question?
Yeah, and I took you at your word.
I'm afraid I didn't
Nicola,
quite tell the truth.
because
Okay, because another really good one came in. I promise this is the last one, and I know you probably spotted it as well. And I have to ask you. I have to ask you. The bill covering automated vehicles, micro-mobility, has already been delayed a few times. The most recently to the next parliamentary session. Is there a specific date or ambition? This will be the last question.
Well, we've slightly covered some of that stuff. So I'm going to say that when parliamentary time allows, we've talked a little bit about parliamentary time. In a way, I think the key thing here is to understand that this is a government that, more than any other, recently has pledged itself to innovation and technology. The Prime Minister set up a new department specifically focused on that. We have the example of dare I say it, my beloved wife on the vaccine task force for what innovation technology can do if you really drive it hard in a way that's cooperative between the public sector and the private sector. And we have a focus on innovation that has got the Prime Minister talking about the importance of everyone being mathematically numerate, and these are big ambitious goals, all heading in my view in the right direction, and that direction is towards innovation, technology, the better use of the extraordinary science and technology base we have in this country. So I'm not going to delve too deeply into the mysteries of the parliamentary process, but I think there's every reason for the people in this room to feel that it's a warm, supportive environment in which they can go out, do business, help people and make money.
Okay, Jessie Norman, thank you so much. Jessie Norman MP, thank you.